Hi and welcome to another tutorial. In today's lesson we'll learn how to recreate this cool looking black portal effect using Adobe After Effects. So anyways guys, let's jump in. So the first thing that we're going to have to do here is we are going to need some images. So I just went to Adobe Firefly and I just searched up a faint glow from lights on a brutalist style large frame shining through foggy conditions cinematic, and I had it as film noir and misty, and I was quite happy with this one here. So I envisioned that I can put the portal down there. Once you're happy with your image, all you have to do is just download it and put it into Adobe Photoshop. So here we are in Adobe Photoshop. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to import your image. Now I'm doing this at 4K, so I made sure that my resolution was 4K. Then what I need to do is I need to unlock the background, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press P for the pen tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and then I'm going to start probably up here at the top. I'm going to go to this point here, click and hold, and now I can draw that curve there. Now if you want to adjust any of these curves, you can hold Option and you can move this one down if you want, or you can move this one individually however you like. But I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to complete that shape, and when I get to that final part, I'm just going to hold my mouse button just so I can move it around like that. Then once I've done that, then the next thing that you need to do is you will need to make a selection from your pen tool. Now you can give it a feather. In my video I did give it a feather of 10, but I'll probably just drop that down to about 7, and then press delete, and that feather just gives that smooth edge on the sides. If you don't like that, then you can always get rid of that. So once you're happy with that, then what we need to do is save it as a PSD document and take it into After Effects. So here we are in After Effects, and we're just going to go on a new composition. I'm just going to go with a 4K comp at a duration of about 10 to 15 seconds. Just press OK. Once you have that, then what you need to do is you need to import your PSD file. And once you import it, you want to have editable layer styles. So just press OK. So now really the only thing that we need is just the bottom layer. So if I'm just going to put that in there like that, now I've got my little area for my portal over there at the back. And so that's pretty cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it, let's say, portal. And I'm going to put it underneath my this layer over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on that and go to layer pre-compose, and I'm just going to call this portal. So now I can work in there just like that. So now the first thing that we need to do in here is we need to add an effect called cell pattern. And you can play around with some of these settings, but the settings that I went for, Crystals HQ, I bumped up the contrast to about 600. Then what I went to the overflow and I went to wrap black. Then I went to the size and I changed the size to about 270. Then what I did is I went to the tiling options. I pressed on enable tiling, and then I animated this offset, but first I'm going to start it at 0. So I'm going to start that at 0 and then move to the end of the timeline and then put it back to, let's say, 1080. And so now you will have that pattern going up, and if you want a bit faster than that, then you can just double that. So 2160. So now we have that movement going down, and that looks pretty cool. So now the next effect that we're going to have in here is called turbulent displace. So I'm going to change the amount to about 58. I'm going to change the size to 80. I'm going to change the complexity to 2.5. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the evolution options and go pin all locked. And so now we're starting to get those wiggles that are kind of happening in there. So that's looking pretty cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create another layer, and this time we're going to call it noise. And so what do you think the first effect on here is going to be? It's going to be some turbulent noise. So in here, we're going to change the fractal type to swirly. We're going to change the contrast to just bump it up a little bit, maybe 104. You can go a bit more if you want, but I'll leave it as it was, 104, I guess. We're going to go to the scale. So if you open up the transform options, okay, and then if you change the scale to, let's say, 400, now you've got this kind of effect. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down to the complexity and change it, you know, put it down to what we had before, like 2.5. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some fractal noise on top of that. So if I add some fractal noise in there, and I do similar things. So I change the fractal type to swirly. All right. Then if I change the contrast to, let's say, 111. If I go back and change the complexity to, let's say, 2.6. Then if I go to the scale settings, so if I open up transform and change it back up to 400, now we're going to get a similar effect there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate the evolution option. So depending on how fast you're going to do it. So I've hit the stopwatch at 0 and maybe let's put it, 10 times. And so now if it goes through, now you're going to have that kind of warpy kind of look over there. And so I think that looks pretty cool. So moving on, the last thing we're going to do in here is go to the blending option, and we are going to go to difference. Cool. So now you have those two kind of things intertwining with each other, and I think that's looking pretty cool. So going back to the portal layer, what we're going to do is we are going to create a displacement map, and what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to change it to our noise layer, and we're going to change it to effects and masks. All right, and then we're going to change the max horizontal displacement to 100, and we're going to change the vertical displacement to 100 as well. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new adjustment layer. We're going to put it right at the top, and on top of this adjustment layer, we're going to add in a few things. So the first one is going to be compound blur. And so compound blur, we're going to set it to our portal layer, and then we're going to change it to effects and masks. And we are going to really bump that up. Maybe let's say 400. And we've got this cool kind of effect that's happening there. So now the next effect that we are going to add in here is CC glass. So we're going to open up the surface settings. We're going to change the bump map to our noise layer, then change the source to effects and mask. Then what we're going to do is we're going to change the softness to 10. We're going to change the height to 100, and we're going to change the displacement to about 27. Now you got some really kind of trippy effects happening in there. So that's looking pretty cool. We're going to go to our light. We're going to go to AE light. And then what we are going to do is we're going to go to shading. So we're going to change the ambient to 30, the diffuse to 6, the specular to 100, and the roughness to 0.165. Cool. So now we have some really kind of trippy effects happening in there. So then the final thing that we need to do in here is just add some lights. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new light. And for the first light, what we're going to do is we are going to add a point light. So point light, I'm going to probably keep it at around about, like let's say 130 for the intensity, and then press OK. And now you can actually move where you want that light to be. So if you want to move it down, move it across. So we kind of want it somewhere in the middle, but I guess the spotlight is going to really help us out there. But this will help, to get the nice kind of look in the middle of the portal. So we're going to add one other final light in here, and this is going to be a spotlight. And I'm just going to bring down the intensity to about 120. I'm going to change the angle to about 43, and then I'm going to change the cone feather to about 100. And I guess you can leave it in the middle, and I think that's looking pretty cool. So if you want to go back and change anything, you can always go back into your layers and then you can play around with some of the settings. So, you know, that gives a more kind of metallic-y kind of look if you increase the contrast there, or if you increase the complexity as well, that gives a kind of unique look as well. So go back and have a look at, you know, some of the things that you can change in there. So anyways, so once you're happy with that, let's go back to the main comp, and now we can see our, you know, little portal over there. Now our portal is just way too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale it down, and I'm going to try and keep that, you know, the light just right in the middle, just like that. So now that we have our portal in there, so now we kind of need to make it match with the rest of the clip over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some lumetri color onto this. And if I just go down to the creative settings, and if I go to SL Gold Rush, now it kind of makes it a little bit darker, and you can play around with some of those settings as well. But I'm also going to add a tint. So if I just grab some of this, you know, maybe like something like that. So now once we've added the tint on there as well, the final thing that we can do in here is just add some glow. So the final thing that I added was the glow, and I just played around with some of these settings, but I'll go with a threshold of about 80, a glow radius of about 90, and I'll keep the glow intensity at 1. The other thing that I added on here was some light rays as well. And so what I did is I just moved the light rays to the middle, and again, you can change the color if you want. And you know, if you set it to maybe something like we have over here, which is a bit dark, but maybe like something like that, and now you've got some cool light rays that kind of work with that you know, portal as well. So the final thing that I'll add in here is that I will add in a scale in animation. So if I highlight all of this and go to layer, pre-compose, and then if I just add a simple scale in animation, so hit the stopwatch for scale and then move it in, let's say 110, and then finally if I add some lumetri color back to everything and go back to the creative and then go back to SL Gold Rush, so now it kind of, you know, gives it that kind of dark vibe like that. And that's it pretty much. So anyways guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next video.